Meeting's being recorded.
All you, buddy.
Continue. All right. How's it going, everybody? My name is Gavin, and I am a drug addict. So I first started using hard drugs at 18 years old. I was that well-researched college kid, right? Oh, this compound should fix the tachycardia caused by the synthetic cathinone. I was Mr. Smarty Pants. I wasn't going to end up like the average American drug user because I was armed with that internet knowledge, right? Well, by 23, I'm hanging out in Killeen, Texas, slamming meth with fucking Mexican gangsters, just like everybody else. So I guess you could say my journey started when I was 15, smoking weed during lunch at school, and sometimes getting drunk on weekends with my buddies. Ended at 26, locked in a bathroom, injecting myself with imprecise mixtures of meth and heroin, crying tears of despair and jacking off, all at the exact same time. I was more or less a textbook completion of the gateway theory, I guess you could say. So what happened? I guess let's start from the beginning here. In the August of 1993, I was born to two loving and wonderful parents. My dad was in the army, so we were constantly moving all over the fucking place every 2 years or so. But other than that, great family, really happy childhood. Never got beat. Well, this was the old days when we could still get the belt whenever we were acting up. But yeah, never got abused, never got touched or had any kind of funny shit happen. I am blessed to have had a really, truly happy upbringing. Now, I do have the genetic predisposition to addiction from both sides of the family, if that's even really a thing. But I mean, otherwise, great family, happy childhood. Strange, right? So let's dig a little bit deeper in my formative years, I guess. What's really my excuse? Well, from my very earliest memories, I've had a deep and powerful love for rock and roll music. And then when I was 10 years old, I started playing the guitar. So naturally, growing up, I idolized all my favorite rock stars, Phil Anselmo, Bon Scott, Ozzy, Marilyn Manson, all the magazines, biographies, interviews, and everything I could get my little hands on. I ate it all up. Then at around age 12, my short and curly start sprouting. Along with this come the good old feelings of immense insecurity, angst, social anxiety, and sexual frustration that I'm sure every person on earth is at least vaguely familiar with. Awkward, shy, and just absolutely 100% uncomfortable in my own skin. No idea who or what I am, and desperately trying to find a way to impress girls. Well, everybody knows who gets the most girls, right? They're rock stars. As such, all my rock and roll idols were the guys I began striving to emulate. Well, most of these dudes I idolized also happened to share a common issue. For one thing, they pretty much all consumed alcohol in reckless quantities, so that was obviously going to be something to do when I grew up. But in addition to that, from all these books and interviews and shit, I read a good deal about drugs. Now, my family could tell me that drugs are bad until the cows come home, right? And they did. Same thing with school. I graduated from the DARE program. And shit, the moral of all of what I read was that drugs are bad, right? I read about how heroin destroyed many of my favorite bands, all these guys from the 70s who died from choking on their own vomit, so on and so forth, All cautionary tales for the aspiring young musician. Ultimately, however, the association that was gleaned by my impressionable young subconscious mind was that sex equals drugs equals rock and roll. Sound familiar? We're going to revisit that formula later. But anyway, so like I mentioned before, puberty is whack. Awkward, insecure, sexually frustrated, 100% uncomfortable in my own skin. But anyway, during my freshman year of high school, probably due to a combination of like my temperament and the way I dressed, people started assuming and labeling me as a druggie. Now at this point, I couldn't even have told you what fucking weed looked like, right? But the label druggie happened to complement the silly little guitar picking rebel image that I was trying to cultivate, and vastly preferring that to the label of creep or weirdo, I ran with it. It wasn't until about midway through age 15 that I actually discovered marijuana and booze. So the booze. Bro, I was a problem drinker from the get-go. I was the real alcoholic described in the AA book from the very first time. No question about that. Passing out before 10 o'clock, throwing up on pretty girls, crawling around and crying, I want to kill myself. I was that guy. Yet, in spite of that, for all the issues previously mentioned, insecurity, social anxiety, sexual frustration, I fucking loved the effect that alcohol produced in my brain. Plus, of course, drinking underage made me cool. To be honest, though, looking back, unlike alcohol, I never really actually enjoyed the effects of weed. It would sometimes make me paranoid, but most of the time it would just butt fuck me with this completely negative emotional disposition. Like, I never saw it do anything like that to anybody else, but what do you know? Again, whenever I would smoke, I was that guy. So why did I do it? Well, because of course, like I said, I thought it made me cool. Well, around fall 2011, weed led me into contact with people who dealt in other illegal goods. But before that, let's backtrack a little bit, and I got to tell you about when I found love. So the beginning of my junior year of high school, the whole goofy little rock and roll guitar boy shtick finally worked, and I met a girl. My first actual girlfriend, right? She's this cool ass chick, smart as hell, down as fuck. So what's the problem? Well, in nature, there seems to exist this incredible phenomenon of when a guy is single, there's not a woman in sight who wants anything to do with him, right? But the second he gets a girlfriend, how should I say this? The floozies just appear out of the woodwork, out of nowhere, from every direction. Hey, Gavin, right? So I had this awesome chick, but also all this newfound attention from women that I'd never experienced before. So naturally, being a selfish and self-centered piece of shit, I indulged in that. Anyway, so long story short on that, we broke up when we got to college because I wanted to party and get drunk and smoke weed with my cool friends rather than spend time with her. Then, of course, in classic tragic fashion, a few weeks later, it suddenly dawns on me like, what have I done? But by this point, there's complications. There's another dude in the picture, yada, yada, yada. Bottom line, she has outgrown me. And ironically enough, this really fucked me up. Like I said, happy childhood, standard shitty puberty. A lot of people may roll their eyes at this, but this was my first real experience of trauma, I'd say. What do I mean by that? Well, I began exhibiting antics and behaviors indicative of slight to moderate mental instability, like holding a loaded gun in my mouth and just all manner of whack ass melodramatic shit. I didn't exactly handle the situation with any kind of dignity whatsoever. So, of course, freshman year of college, instead of studying and going to class, I am drinking excessively. Kentucky Deluxe or something equally disgusting at least 6 days a week, either by myself or around people who would have preferred me to do it by myself. And then one fateful evening, 18 years old, enter cocaine. Cocaine. You want to talk about, I want to feel this feeling for the rest of my life. Well, of course, it's fucking cocaine. That's what it does. But bro, at the time, to my freshly deflowered drug virgin mind, oh goodness. Oh goodness. 18 years old, out of this black abyss of suicidal depression, I had just discovered the fucking philosopher's stone. And it was inside this gross little baggie of mid-grade cocaine. Honestly, my mindset when I first took that plunge, I wasn't trying to fit in or do anything exciting or anything like that. It was pretty much like, wow, this shit might actually kill me. Nice. Well, lo and behold, instead of killing me, I just really, really liked it. Go figure. Anyway, so my first bottom was roughly 1 year after I regularly started using drugs. And by this point, I'd made it all the way from ecstasy to heroin with every fucking painkiller, ADHD medicine, and weird internet research chemical in between. So through my involvement with drugs and drug people, one dumbass thing led to another, and one day at 19 years old, after making a series of very foolish drunken decisions, I found myself federally indicted, basically as an accessory after the fact to murder. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong people, and too drunk to care. That, my friends, is a real bitch of a combination. Long story short, on that, the result of that was 6 months of house arrest and 2 years of probation. My ex and I, remember the one I was all fucked up over earlier? We get back together. Just like before. Cool ass shit. Down as fuck. Sticks with me through a bunch of shit. Spring 2014, I am arguably the single luckiest man alive. For the entire prior year, my excuse for drinking and drugging myself stupid had been more or less, I can't bear the pain of being without her. I was on that kind of shit. Well, now I had her again. The girl I'd held a gun in my mouth over. I had her back. I had her back, and yet strangely, I now found that I still wanted to get high. My only wish in the world had been granted, and I still wanted to get high. Get high and flirt with floozies. And that's exactly what I did. Well, right around my 21st birthday, she finally grew tired of being with a lying, embarrassing, junky man-child, and she bailed for the last time. And what do you know? This really fucked me up. So, after losing the only woman I've ever loved, again, do I finally change my ways, get my shit together, mature, and evolve as a human being? Absolutely not, bro. I'm 21 now. I hit the liquor store. And I commenced to pathetically drowning my sorrows for the next year and a half or so. Now, somehow, amidst all of this, I managed to complete probation and graduate college. While getting a degree and finishing probation may have seemed like cause for joy and celebration, the joy would be short-lived because a new dark specter had arrived in my sphere. She goes by many names. Tina, Tina, Tina. It's about a month or two into doing that shit every day, and then tapping the vein suddenly becomes an acceptable idea. Now, of course, I've been one of those silly kids of firm resolve, right? Yeah, I might do a lot of drugs and shit every single day, but I'll never stick a needle in my arm, blah, blah, blah. Well, as it turned out, all it took was one friend who got really heavy into it, and one night I got curious. Funny how that works. But yeah, I'm sure we all know how methamphetamine works, right? I lose my job, I engage in progressively sketchier behaviors, become an emaciated shell of my former self, somehow end up stranded barefoot in a fucking McDonald's for 6 hours on multiple occasions, etc. Oh, here's a fun story. Last time I got arrested was one morning after I'd been awake for a good hot minute. I was driving around, and then next thing I know, there's a loud bang on my door, and two sheriffs had their guns drawn, screaming at me to get out of the car. Turns out I'd parked and fallen asleep in some poor random people's driveway. That was great. Yeah, the shard works in mysterious ways, you could say. Anywho, let's revisit that stupid little formula from earlier. Sex equals drugs equals rock and roll. So like I briefly mentioned at the beginning, I played guitar since I was 10. It's my passion. It's my art. Right? I played in bands, recorded music, sold merch, the whole nine. And I've done pretty much all of that with the guitar I've had since I was 13 years old, my prized possession. Well, I say my second true bottom came when one day I took that guitar to town and I pawned it. That's right. I pawned my guitar. I pawned it for a half gram of meth and some gas station food. So now, what was I left with from that stupid formula? No more rock and roll, barely any drugs, and sex? No self-respecting woman is going to go anywhere near a dude who hasn't slept or eaten in 5 days. In fact, by the end, even the tweaker women wouldn't touch me. Now, if that is not a state of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, then I don't know what is. It was time, I felt, for an agonizing reappraisal of the whole scene. It was time for a change, a psychic change. Let's talk about that. The late English occultist Aleister Crowley has a quote from one of his writings that's something to the effect of, whether or not these things can be said to exist objectively is irrelevant, for by doing certain things, certain results will follow. Let me repeat that. Whether or not these things can be said to exist objectively is irrelevant, for by doing certain things, certain results will follow. Now that's more or less the attitude I take towards the 12 steps, right? I encourage people to approach the 12 steps like a scientist. While I found that the whole higher power thing may sound like superstitious bogus to a lot of people when they're first starting out, but the way I see it, the steps continually prove to be a scientific methodology by which people not only get clean, but also get happy and peaceful. So even if at first you're just going through the motions, as a lot of people can attest to, I'm sure, remember that by doing certain things, certain results will follow. All right. That being said, we have the triangle, right? The mind, body, spirit. And in my experience, and I'm sure in everybody's experience, we need to have all three of these things balanced if we hope to succeed in this recovery thing. So spiritually, I would say that meditation is my primary tool. I find that serves the majority of my personal purposes. Honestly, I'm not much of a prayer guy, but I do find that I'll turn to that when it comes to other people occasionally, like God, please comfort my sick grandma, or God, please look after my friend who just relapsed, shit like that. But along with meditation, I'd say the other most important tool for my recovery is physical fitness, like absolutely crucial. It is my understanding that communication with my higher power, infinite intelligence, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, is that occurs via the subconscious mind. And the medium for conscious contact with the subconscious mind is the physical body. What do I mean by that? Basically, just think about all the shit that happens in your body to sustain life without your requiring your conscious attention. Your heartbeat, digestion, your breathing, so on and so forth. In other words, as the old adage goes, your body is a temple. And the training of the body directly correlates with the training of the mind. Because as above, so below, right? You guys may have heard that. The mind is more or less a problem-solving machine. And the nature of this machine is to do the shitty thing where if you're not currently experiencing any sort of substantial adversity or problem, the mind will begin to manufacture its own problems, as many of us may experience on a regular basis. In my addiction, I used to manufacture my own adversity by neglecting and poisoning the ever-living fuck out of my body. Now, I manufacture my own adversity by lifting weights, eating healthy, and meditating for at least 20 minutes every day. Dude, it's all shit that deep down I always wanted to do, but I never had the discipline to implement it because drugs and alcohol were just easier. Yeah, bro, I guess to sum it up, the whole point of this recovery thing is really just to become comfortable in your own skin. And like from a conversation I had about a week ago with Will on the phone, Will pointed out that going your entire life without ever really knowing who you are that's the very definition of insanity. And like most people, I always had these absurd beliefs that it was something external that was gonna fix me and help me to know myself. Like, oh, bro, if I could just hook up with this girl, then I'll finally be confident. Or if I can just eat this much mushrooms next time, I'll finally understand life. Or If I could just have unlimited meth, I'll be successful, right? But wouldn't you know, this whole fucking time, the answer was really just push-ups and self-talk, and then helping other people by serving as a good example. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thank y'all for letting me share my story. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram or anything, my username is just my name. It's Gavin Hairgrove. So that's GAVIN HAIRGROVE, all one word.